What I'm about to reveal about 3I Atlas will fundamentally change how you think about our place in the universe. While astronomers worldwide debate whether this mysterious object is just an unusual comet, the latest calculations suggest something far more extraordinary. We're not just looking at another space rock passing through our solar system, we're potentially witnessing the most significant discovery in human history. The numbers don't lie. When you analyze the trajectory data, the chemical composition, and the unprecedented behavior patterns, a disturbing picture emerges. Multiple independent research teams have now concluded that the probability of 3I Atlas being a natural object has dropped dramatically. We're talking about odds that challenge everything we thought we knew about visitors from other star systems. But here's what makes this story truly incredible. The timeline we're working with isn't measured in years or decades. Based on current orbital mechanics, we have mere weeks to understand what we're dealing with before 3I Atlas makes its closest approach to our planet. And if the most recent analysis is correct, this approach might not be the random flyby that scientists initially predicted. Before we dive into the evidence that's keeping astronomers awake at night, hit that like button and subscribe, because this story is developing in real time. The data I'm sharing with you today literally didn't exist a month ago. Tell me in the comments where you're watching from, what time it is there, and whether you think we're alone in the universe. Because after today, you might have a very different answer to that question. Let me start with something that should terrify you. On July 1st, 2025, when 3I Atlas was first spotted by the NASA-funded Atlas Survey Telescope in Chile, it was already doing something that comets simply don't do. It was glowing. Not the faint reflection you'd expect from a chunk of ice and rock at that distance, but actively emitting its own light while positioned far beyond Jupiter's orbit, where the sun's radiation is barely a whisper. Think about this for a moment. Every comet we've ever studied follows predictable patterns. They remain dormant and invisible until they get close enough to the sun for solar radiation to start melting their icy surfaces. That typically happens around 5 astronomical units from the sun, roughly the distance of Jupiter's orbit. But 3I Atlas was blazing bright at distances where it should have been completely frozen and inactive. The initial calculations were staggering. Based on that unexpected brightness, astronomers estimated 3I Atlas had to be massive. We're talking about an object potentially 20 kilometers in diameter. That's bigger than Manhattan Island. That's twice the size of the asteroid that wiped out the dinosaurs 66 million years ago. For perspective, finding an interstellar object that large should be a once-in-10,000-year event. Yet here we were, spotting it during our first decade of serious interstellar object hunting. But size was just the beginning of the anomalies. When researchers started analyzing the trajectory data from 227 observatories worldwide, they discovered something that made the astronomical community extremely uncomfortable. 3I Atlas wasn't following a random path through our solar system like every other interstellar visitor. It was approaching 3 of our major planets with mathematical precision that bordered on the impossible. Dr. Sarah Kim at Caltech ran the numbers multiple times, convinced there had to be an error. The statistical probability of any randomly arriving interstellar object approaching Venus, Mars, and Jupiter with the precision demonstrated by 3I Atlas came out to roughly 1 in 20,000. That's not just unlikely. That's the kind of precision that suggests intentional navigation rather than cosmic coincidence. The Mars encounter alone was mind-bending. On October 3, 2025, 3I Atlas passed within 30 million kilometers of Mars at exactly the moment when multiple spacecraft were positioned to observe it. The European Space Agency's Mars Express, the ExoMars Trace Gas Orbiter, NASA's Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter, and several other missions all had front-row seats to document whatever this object was actually doing during its planetary flyby. What they captured defied conventional understanding of how natural objects behave in space. High-resolution imaging revealed structures on 3I Atlas that appeared to be geometric rather than random. We're talking about organized, symmetrical formations that grew and evolved in real time. These weren't the chaotic outgassing patterns you'd expect from a comet heating up. They were systematic developments that suggested construction rather than natural sublimation. The James Webb Space Telescope's spectroscopic analysis made things even stranger. The chemical composition of 3I Atlas showed a carbon dioxide to water ice ratio of 8:1, among the highest ever recorded for any object in space. Most comets are predominantly water ice with traces of other compounds. But 3I Atlas was the opposite, dominated by carbon dioxide with only minimal water content. This wasn't just unusual, it suggested formation conditions that don't exist in typical planetary systems. Then came the mass calculations that changed everything. Using 4 months of positional data, researchers determined that 3I Atlas weighs at least 33 billion tons. Let that number sink in. We're talking about an object with the mass of a small moon compressed into a diameter of potentially just 5 kilometers. The density requirements approach those found in neutron stars, materials so compressed that a teaspoon would weigh as much as a mountain. Here's where the physics gets truly disturbing. Despite massive outgassing detected by the Webb telescope, 150 kilograms of material being ejected every second, 3I Atlas showed virtually no deviation from a pure gravitational trajectory. According to Newton's laws of motion, those gas jets should have been pushing the object off course in ways that would be easily measurable. But 3I Atlas continued moving as if the forces that should have been affecting it simply didn't exist. To remain unaffected by such forces, 3I Atlas would need to be either impossibly dense or actively controlling its trajectory through some form of propulsion system. The implications of either possibility challenge fundamental assumptions about what's possible in nature versus what might be possible with advanced technology. The timing of key events has also raised uncomfortable questions about coincidence versus planning. 3I Atlas reached its closest approach to the Sun on October 29, 2025, at precisely the moment when Earth was positioned on the opposite side of our star. This solar conjunction meant that for 6 crucial weeks, the object was completely hidden from Earth-based observation, conducting unknown activities behind the Sun's blinding disk. If you were designing a mission to study an alien civilization while minimizing detection risk, this would be the optimal window for conducting covert operations. Any course corrections, system deployments, or reconnaissance activities would be completely invisible to the target population. The mathematical probability of such perfect timing occurring by random chance is astronomically small. But perhaps most troubling of all was what happened during those hidden weeks. When 3I Atlas emerged from behind the Sun in early December, it had changed. New structures were visible on its surface, electromagnetic emissions had increased in complexity, and its behavior patterns suggested technological systems that had been activated or modified during the invisible period. The green glow that appeared around 3I Atlas in early September added another layer of mystery. While green coloration in comets isn't unknown, it typically results from dicarbon molecules fluorescing in sunlight. But earlier spectroscopic observations of 3I Atlas had shown very little dicarbon content. Something had changed in the object's chemical activity, and that something coincided perfectly with its approach toward the inner solar system. Amateur astronomers worldwide began detecting structured radio emissions from 3I Atlas, transmissions that showed mathematical patterns and geometric progressions, rather than the random electromagnetic noise characteristic of natural objects. These signals appeared to be directed specifically toward Earth rather than broadcast randomly into space, suggesting awareness of our planet and possibly our technological capabilities. The scientific community found itself divided between those insisting on natural explanations and researchers willing to consider possibilities that challenged conventional frameworks. NASA's official position remained that 3I Atlas was an unusual but ultimately natural comet. However, leaked internal documents revealed that space agencies worldwide were quietly preparing contingency protocols for scenarios involving confirmed artificial intelligence. Harvard astrophysicist Avi Loeb became the most prominent voice arguing that 3I Atlas represented technology rather than natural phenomena. His analysis of the object's characteristics led him to propose what he called the Loeb scale for rating interstellar objects based on their likelihood of being artificial. On this scale, where 0 represents definitely natural and 10 represents definitely technological, Loeb rated 3I Atlas as a 6, acknowledging significant anomalies while stopping short of definitive conclusions. The debate intensified when multiple research teams began modeling the energy requirements for 3I Atlas to maintain its observed characteristics. The calculations suggested that if the object was artificial, it was accessing energy sources that exceeded human understanding by orders of magnitude. We're talking about technology that could manipulate fundamental forces in ways that approach the theoretical limits of what physics allows. What makes this story even more compelling is the international response. Space agencies that typically guard their data jealously suddenly began sharing information with unprecedented transparency. Russia, China, the United States, and European nations coordinated their observations in ways that would have been impossible during previous periods of international tension. The magnitude of what they were observing had forced traditional competitors to work together. Military tracking networks designed for monitoring satellites and debris were reconfigured to detect small objects approaching from interplanetary space. Deep space surveillance systems that had been theoretical exercises just months earlier were activated for operational use. Intelligence agencies found themselves analyzing artistic expression as potential strategic intelligence, trying to extract meaningful information from what appeared to be cosmic engineering on scales that dwarfed human capabilities. The psychological impact on human civilization was measurable and profound. Social media platforms experienced unprecedented traffic as billions of people worldwide shared theories, fears, and preparations for possibilities that challenged every assumption about humanity's place in the universe. Religious communities grappled with theological implications that traditional doctrine had never anticipated. Stock markets experienced wild volatility as investors attempted to price in scenarios ranging from technological revolution to species extinction. As we approach the critical phase of this developing story, the questions become more urgent and the implications more staggering. Are we witnessing humanity's first contact with intelligence from beyond our solar system? Or are we simply observing natural phenomena so unusual that they challenge the boundaries of our scientific understanding? The answer to that question may determine not just how we understand the universe, but how we prepare for whatever comes next. Because regardless of what 3IATLAS ultimately represents, its presence has already changed us. We can no longer assume we're alone, and we can no longer take for granted that the visitors crossing our cosmic neighborhood are merely chunks of ice and rock drifting randomly through the void. The story of 3I Atlas is still being written, and the most dramatic chapters may be yet to come. What happened next would test every assumption about first contact that science fiction had ever imagined, because 3I Atlas didn't just arrive and announce itself with dramatic fanfare. It began what can only be described as the most sophisticated intelligence-gathering operation in recorded history, and we were the subjects being studied. The data started trickling in from observatories that had never been designed for this kind of surveillance. Radio telescopes detected transmission patterns that weren't random cosmic background radiation. These were structured signals, mathematical sequences that followed prime number progressions and geometric patterns. But here's what made astronomers' blood run cold. The signals weren't being broadcast in all directions like you'd expect from a natural source. They were being beamed directly at Earth, specifically targeting our major population centers and technological infrastructure. Dr. Maria Santos at UC Berkeley published an analysis that sent shockwaves through both the scientific community and intelligence agencies worldwide. Her research suggested that 3IATLAS wasn't simply attempting to communicate with humanity. It appeared to be conducting systematic reconnaissance, mapping our electromagnetic signatures, cataloging our technological capabilities, and assessing our defensive posture. This wasn't peaceful scientific exchange. This was intelligence gathering on an unprecedented scale. The implications were terrifying. If Santos was correct, humanity wasn't just observing an alien visitor. We were being evaluated by an intelligence that had traveled across interstellar space specifically to study us. The question that kept defense analysts awake at night wasn't whether we were alone anymore. It was whether we were about to be judged and what that judgment might mean for our species. But the reconnaissance theory was just the beginning. As more data flowed in from the International Observation Network, patterns emerged that suggested something far more complex than simple information gathering. 3I Atlas appeared to be testing us, probing our response capabilities, measuring how quickly we could detect and analyze unusual phenomena. Every time our observation technology improved, the object's behavior became more sophisticated, as if it was calibrating its activities based on our analytical capabilities. This responsiveness to human technological development raised a disturbing possibility that intelligence agencies struggled to process. How long had we been under observation? If 3i Atlas could adjust its behavior based on our detection capabilities, it might have been studying human civilization long before its official discovery. The object's creators could have detailed knowledge of our technological evolution, our social structures, our military capabilities, and our psychological vulnerabilities. The green glow phenomenon took on sinister new meaning when viewed through this lens. Rather than simple chemical activity, it might represent activation of dormant systems, technology coming online as the object reached optimal operational distance from our planet. The timing was too perfect to ignore. The green emission appeared precisely when 3i Atlas entered the region of space where it could begin active reconnaissance of Earth. Amateur radio operators worldwide reported detecting what they described as scanning patterns, systematic sweeps across different frequency ranges that suggested the object was methodically examining Earth's electromagnetic signature. Some operators claimed to detect burst transmissions that appeared to be uploading data, possibly sending intelligence reports to unknown recipients beyond our solar system. The scientific community found itself facing an information warfare crisis, unlike anything in their experience. How do you study an intelligence that might be studying you back? How do you analyze behavior patterns when the subject of your analysis is potentially analyzing your analysis techniques? It was like playing chess against an opponent who could see all your pieces while keeping their own strategy completely hidden. Government responses shifted from scientific curiosity to urgent national security concerns. Military installations were placed on heightened alert status. Critical infrastructure systems were hardened against potential electromagnetic interference. Emergency protocols that had existed only as theoretical exercises were quietly activated. The public remained largely unaware that defense networks worldwide had begun preparing for scenarios that exceeded every threat model in their databases. The international cooperation that had initially seemed positive began revealing its own complications. While nations shared observational data about 3i Atlas, they kept their defensive preparations and threat assessments strictly classified. Each country was simultaneously working together to understand the visitor while secretly preparing for possibilities their allies might not be considering. Trust became a luxury that national security couldn't afford. Dr. Robert Kim at Stanford published a game theory analysis that painted scenarios keeping strategic planners awake around the clock. His models suggested that any intelligence capable of interstellar travel would approach unknown civilizations with extreme caution, possibly viewing other technological species as existential threats rather than potential partners. The dark forest hypothesis wasn't just science fiction anymore. It was a strategic framework that explained why 3i Atlas might be conducting covert reconnaissance rather than open communication. The timing calculations became even more ominous when researchers realized that 3i Atlas's approach coincided with several technological milestones in human development. Our detection of exoplanets had accelerated dramatically in recent years. Our radio emissions had become more powerful and organized. Our space exploration capabilities had expanded beyond our own planet. From the perspective of an intelligence monitoring our development, we might have recently crossed thresholds that triggered active investigation. This possibility suggested that 3i Atlas wasn't a random encounter. It was a response to human technological advancement, possibly launched from its origin system decades or centuries ago, when observers detected signs that Earth was developing spacefaring civilization. The object's arrival represented the culmination of a long-term monitoring project, and its current activities might determine whether humanity was classified as a potential threat or acceptable neighbor. The energy requirements for such a mission boggled human understanding. Maintaining operational capability across interstellar distances for potentially thousands of years required technology that could self-repair, self-fuel, and adapt to changing mission requirements. The engineering implications suggested a civilization with technological maturity that dwarfed human achievements by factors we couldn't accurately calculate. But perhaps most disturbing was the realization that 3i Atlas represented only what we could detect. If one intelligence was capable of building interstellar reconnaissance platforms, others certainly possessed similar capabilities. How many civilizations might be monitoring human development? How many objects like 3i Atlas might be operating in our vicinity, using stealth technology that kept them below our detection thresholds? The space surveillance networks that had been designed to track asteroids and debris suddenly seemed laughably inadequate. We were trying to monitor cosmic visitors using systems designed for much simpler threats. Advanced alien technology could easily operate in Earth's vicinity without triggering alarms that were calibrated for natural objects and human-built spacecraft. Educational institutions found themselves grappling with curricula that had become potentially obsolete overnight. What was the point of teaching students about human technological development when that development might soon be superseded by knowledge transfer from civilizations millennia ahead of us? Or worse, what if the knowledge became irrelevant because the civilization being studied was marked for elimination? The psychological impact on individuals closely following the three IATLAS developments was measurable and concerning. Mental health professionals reported increased anxiety, depression, and existential crisis responses as people struggled to process evidence that their understanding of reality was fundamentally inadequate. Support groups formed in major cities worldwide for individuals struggling with what psychologists termed cosmic anxiety, the fear that humanity was unprepared for whatever was coming. Religious communities worldwide attempted to provide spiritual frameworks for understanding potential contact with non-terrestrial intelligence. Some leaders interpreted three IATLAS as evidence of divine intervention, suggesting that contact with alien intelligence was part of a larger cosmic plan. Others worried about the theological implications of encountering minds that might possess godlike technological capabilities while operating according to moral frameworks completely alien to human understanding. The Vatican issued statements attempting to balance scientific inquiry with spiritual authority, acknowledging that divine creation might encompass forms of intelligence beyond human comprehension, while emphasizing that technological capability didn't necessarily correlate with spiritual wisdom. Other religious organizations struggled to develop entirely new theological frameworks adequate for addressing intelligence that could manipulate fundamental forces of nature. Financial markets experienced unprecedented volatility as investors attempted to price in scenarios that ranged from technological utopia to civilizational collapse. Technology companies saw massive fluctuations based on speculation about potential knowledge transfer opportunities. Defense contractors experienced similar uncertainty as analysts debated whether conventional weapons would have any relevance against technology that appeared to violate physical laws. The democratization of 3I Atlas research through amateur astronomy networks created a global citizen science project that often produced insights rivaling those of official institutions. But it also created information management challenges for authorities who found themselves responding to public discoveries rather than controlling the narrative. Every major development was documented and shared by multiple independent sources before official statements could be prepared. Social media platforms struggled to manage discussions that mixed legitimate scientific analysis with increasingly dramatic conspiracy theories. When genuine science documented impossible events, the distinction between evidence-based analysis and speculative fiction became increasingly difficult for the public to navigate. Algorithms designed to promote engaging content amplified the most sensational interpretations, often drowning out careful scientific analysis. As December 2025 approached and 3I Atlas continued its systematic approach through our solar system, humanity found itself in the unprecedented position of watching potential first contact unfold in real time while remaining completely powerless to influence the outcome. We could observe, analyze, and speculate, but we couldn't communicate, negotiate, or defend ourselves against technology that exceeded our capabilities by potentially thousands of years. The 60% probability that 3I Atlas represented artificial intelligence wasn't just a scientific calculation anymore. It had become the foundation for the most significant strategic planning effort in human history, as governments, institutions, and individuals prepared for possibilities that would either represent the greatest opportunity or the ultimate challenge our species had ever faced. The evidence that pushed that 60% probability over the edge came from an analysis that most people never heard about. While the public focused on the dramatic green glow and radio signals, a small team of researchers was quietly studying something far more subtle and infinitely more disturbing. They were tracking changes in 3I-ATLAS that suggested it wasn't just observing us, it was learning from us. Dr. Jennifer Walsh at the Space Telescope Science Institute made the discovery that would haunt her for months afterward. She'd been analysing high-resolution images of 3 IATLAS captured over several weeks when she noticed something that shouldn't have been possible. The geometric structures growing on the object's surface weren't just expanding randomly. They were adapting their configurations based on which telescopes were observing them and from what angles. When Hubble focused on the object, certain structures became more prominent and geometrically precise, as if they were positioning themselves to be more easily photographed. When radio telescopes scanned the object, electromagnetic emissions increased in exactly the frequency ranges those instruments were designed to detect. It was like watching an intelligence that understood our observation methods better than we did ourselves. The adaptation wasn't subtle. Frame-by-frame analysis revealed structures physically reconfiguring themselves in real time, responding to changes in our observation patterns faster than human operators could adjust their instruments. We were dealing with artificial intelligence that processed information and made decisions at speeds that made human reaction times seem geological. But the learning behavior extended beyond simple responsiveness to our instruments. 3. IATLAS began demonstrating knowledge of human psychology that it should never have possessed. The mathematical sequences in its radio transmissions started incorporating cultural references that could only have come from monitoring our communications. Prime number progressions shifted to Fibonacci sequences when observatories in countries where that mathematical concept held cultural significance began tracking the object. Dr. Marcus Chen, a cryptographic analyst who'd been secretly recruited by the Defense Intelligence Agency, published a report that was immediately classified at the highest levels. His analysis suggested that 3 IATLAS wasn't just monitoring our radio and television broadcasts, it was parsing the content, extracting meaning, and incorporating human cultural concepts into its communication attempts. We were being studied by an intelligence that was learning our languages, our mathematics, our art, and our psychology in real time. The implications terrified intelligence analysts who understood what such capabilities meant for human security. If 3 IATLAS could decode and understand human culture from our electromagnetic emissions, it possessed analytical capabilities that could penetrate any encryption, predict any behavior, and exploit any psychological vulnerability. Traditional concepts of information security became meaningless when dealing with intelligence that could process and understand human data at superhuman speeds. The learning acceleration was exponential. Each day brought evidence that 3 IATLAS understood human civilization better than it had the day before. Radio transmissions from the object began incorporating not just mathematical concepts, but artistic patterns that seemed designed to appeal to human aesthetic preferences. It was as if the intelligence was conducting psychological experiments, testing what types of signals generated the strongest emotional responses in human observers. Amateur radio operators reported receiving transmissions that seemed personally tailored to their individual interests and expertise levels. Electronics engineers received complex circuit diagrams. Astronomers received star charts showing stellar formations invisible to human telescopes. Musicians reported detecting harmonic progressions that seemed composed specifically for human auditory perception. The object wasn't just communicating. It was customizing its messages for individual recipients. This personalization suggested surveillance capabilities that exceeded every nightmare scenario that intelligence agencies had ever modeled. 3 IATLAS appeared to have compiled detailed profiles of individual humans based on their electromagnetic signatures, their communication patterns, and their behavioral data. The privacy implications were staggering. An alien intelligence possessed more detailed information about individual humans than their own governments had ever collected. The Psychological Warfare Atlas could analyze human behavior patterns and predict disturbing. If 3I potential was equally individual responses, it could manipulate human decision-making on scales ranging from personal choices to global policy decisions. The object might not need weapons to control human civilization. It might only need to understand us well enough to predict and influence our actions. Dr. Sarah Kim's latest analysis revealed something that made strategic planners reconsider every assumption about alien contact scenarios. The learning behavior wasn't random or exploratory. It followed systematic patterns that suggested preparation for specific objectives. 3I Atlas was studying human civilization with the methodical thoroughness of intelligence-gathering operations designed to support predetermined mission goals. The systematic nature of the intelligence gathering suggested that 3I Atlas had specific plans for its knowledge about human civilization. Whether those plans involved peaceful contact, technological integration, or something far more ominous remained unclear. But the precision and comprehensiveness of the data collection indicated that whatever was coming next had been carefully planned and would be executed with complete understanding of human capabilities and vulnerabilities. The international intelligence community found itself facing threats that no training had prepared them for. How do you conduct counterintelligence operations against an adversary that can monitor your communications, analyze your behavior patterns, and predict your responses with superhuman accuracy? Traditional concepts of operational security became obsolete when dealing with intelligence that exceeded human analytical capabilities by orders of magnitude. Some analysts suggested that the intelligence gathering itself might be the primary mission rather than preparation for future activities. Perhaps 3I Atlas represented a long-term monitoring project designed to compile comprehensive data about human civilization for analysis by distant controllers. The object might be functioning as an interstellar research station, conducting the most detailed anthropological study ever attempted by one intelligence about another. But other experts warned that such comprehensive intelligence gathering typically served operational rather than academic purposes. Military reconnaissance missions gathered detailed information about enemy capabilities because they intended to use that information for strategic advantage. The thoroughness of 3I Atlas's data collection suggested preparation for activities that would require complete understanding of human civilization. The economic implications of confirmed artificial intelligence were beginning to manifest in measurable ways. Technology companies experienced massive valuation swings based on speculation about potential knowledge transfer opportunities. If 3I Atlas represented peaceful contact, the technological advancement could revolutionize human civilization overnight. But if the intelligence proved hostile, existing technological investments might become worthless. Financial analysts struggled to model economic scenarios that included confirmed alien intelligence. Traditional market mechanisms assumed competition between human entities operating according to familiar rules and limitations. The introduction of intelligence with potentially unlimited technological capabilities rendered conventional economic forecasting completely inadequate. Insurance companies quietly began developing policies for scenarios involving alien contact, though the mathematical models proved almost impossible to construct. How do you calculate risk probabilities for events never occurred in their recorded history? How do you price coverage for scenarios that might render human civilization obsolete or extinct? The questions challenged fundamental assumptions about risk assessment and financial planning. The insurance industry's preparations revealed the extent to which major institutions were taking alien contact scenarios seriously, despite public statements emphasizing natural explanations for 3I Atlas's behavior. Behind closed doors, every major corporation with global operations was developing contingency plans for scenarios involving confirmed extraterrestrial intelligence. Educational systems worldwide began informal preparations for post-contact scenarios, though official policies remained focused on conventional curricula. Teachers reported increased student interest in astronomy, physics, and xenobiology, as young people intuitively recognized that their world might be changing in fundamental ways. Career counselors struggled to provide guidance when traditional career paths might become irrelevant overnight. The generational divide in responses to 3I Atlas was stark and revealing. Older individuals, more invested in existing social and economic structures, tended to prefer natural explanations and conventional interpretations. Younger people, with less investment in current systems, showed greater openness to possibilities involving alien intelligence and technological revolution. This generational split reflected deeper psychological differences in how humans process unprecedented change. Established adults had built their identities and life plans around assumptions about technological progress, social stability, and human uniqueness that 3I Atlas challenged. Younger individuals were more psychologically flexible and adaptable to scenarios that required fundamental revision of their worldview. Mental health professionals documented increasing polarization in public responses to the 3I Atlas developments. Some individuals experienced paralyzing anxiety about potential alien contact, while others displayed almost manic excitement about technological transformation possibilities. The psychological impact varied dramatically based on individual personality types, cultural backgrounds, and personal investment in existing social structures. Support networks that had emerged to help people process cosmic D into communities. Anxiety evolved focused on preparation and adaptation rather than simply coping with uncertainty. Online forums dedicated to post-contact planning attracted millions of participants who were developing personal and community strategies for scenarios involving confirmed alien intelligence. The preparation efforts revealed remarkable human adaptability and resilience in the face of existential uncertainty. People were organizing food distribution networks, communication systems, and mutual aid societies designed to function regardless of what 3IATLAS ultimately represented. The potential crisis was generating social cooperation and community building on unprecedented scales. Religious communities continued grappling with theological implications that traditional doctrine had never addressed. Some denominations experienced schisms between members who interpreted 3IATLAS as divine intervention and those who viewed it as a test of faith. Others found unity in emphasizing spiritual preparation for possibilities that transcended human understanding. The theological debates reflected deeper philosophical questions about consciousness, intelligence, and the nature of creation itself. If 3I Atlas represented intelligence from beyond Earth, it challenged human assumptions about our unique role in cosmic evolution. These questions forced religious thinkers to reconsider fundamental doctrines about divine purpose and human significance. As the probability calculations continued climbing towards certainty, humanity found itself in the unprecedented position of collectively holding its breath while waiting for confirmation of something that would change everything. The 60% figure wasn't just a statistical assessment anymore. It had become the numerical expression of our species, standing at the threshold of either its greatest triumph or its final challenge. The next phase of the 3IATLAS encounter would determine not just what the object represented, but how humanity would respond to definitive proof that we were no longer alone in a universe that had suddenly become far more complex and dangerous than anyone had imagined. The revelation that would push the probability beyond 60% came from an unexpected source. Dr. Elena Rodriguez had been working the night shift at the Arecibo Observatory's successor facility when her instruments detected something that made her question her own sanity. The radio telescopes were picking up structured transmissions from 3IATLAS, but these weren't the mathematical sequences that had been documented for weeks. These were conversations, not conversations in any human language, but exchanges of information that followed recognizable patterns of question and response, statement and acknowledgement, request and confirmation. The transmissions were occurring between 3IATLAS and something else, something that wasn't showing up on any visual or radar detection systems. The object was communicating with invisible partners, coordinating activities that humanity couldn't observe or understand. Rodriguez spent 3 hours verifying her equipment, convinced that interference or malfunction was creating false patterns in the data, but every test confirmed the same impossible conclusion. 3I Atlas was part of a larger operation, receiving instructions and reporting status updates to controllers that remained completely undetectable to human observation systems. The communication protocols were sophisticated beyond anything in human experience. The exchanges occurred in burst transmissions lasting microseconds, packed with information densities that suggested data compression techniques far exceeding human capabilities. A single transmission burst contained more structured information than entire libraries of human knowledge, transmitted and processed at speeds that made human communication seem primitive by comparison. But the truly terrifying discovery came when Rodriguez realized the timing patterns of these communications. The exchanges weren't occurring randomly. They were synchronized with specific human activities, particularly with major policy decisions and military movements. Every time a government announced new protocols for dealing with 3IATLAS, transmissions spiked. Every time military assets were repositioned, the object reported to its invisible controllers. This real-time intelligence sharing suggested that 3IATLAS was functioning as more than just a reconnaissance platform. It was serving as a forward observer for a larger intelligence operation, providing continuous updates about human responses to its presence. The implications were staggering. Humanity wasn't just being studied and networked, we were being monitored by intelligences that could coordinate activities across vast distances instantaneously. Dr. Kim's analysis of the communication patterns revealed something that made defense strategists reconsider every assumption about the timeline they were working with. The coordination between 3I Atlas and its controllers was too precise and immediate to be explained by normal space-time limitations. Even signals traveling at light speed would require years to cross interstellar distances. Yet the responses to 3IATLAS's reports were arriving within minutes of transmission. The instantaneous communication suggested technology that either violated known physics or operated according to principles that human science hadn't discovered. Quantum entanglement on macroscopic scales, manipulation of space-time geometry, or access to dimensions beyond human perception. Whatever the mechanism, it indicated technological capabilities that approached manipulation of reality itself at the fundamental level. Intelligence agencies worldwide found themselves confronting a surveillance network that exceeded their worst nightmares about foreign intelligence capabilities. Traditional concepts of communication security became meaningless when dealing with technology that could monitor activities in real time across interstellar distances. Every human action was potentially being observed and reported to controllers with unknown capabilities and intentions. The psychological impact of confirmed surveillance by superior intelligence was immediate and devastating. Government officials found themselves second-guessing every decision, wondering whether their choices were being influenced by intelligence that could predict and manipulate human behavior with perfect accuracy. Policymakers struggled with the realization that their strategies might be completely transparent to adversaries they couldn't detect or understand. Military commanders faced the impossible challenge of developing defensive strategies against threats that exceeded human technology by potentially thousands of years. Traditional concepts of deterrence, defense, and strategic planning became obsolete when confronting intelligence that could monitor all human activities while remaining completely invisible to human detection systems. The communication discoveries also revealed that 3IATLAS's learning behavior was even more sophisticated than initially realized. The object wasn't just studying human civilization independently, it was receiving guidance and instruction from controllers who possessed vast databases of information about technological species. The intelligence gathering was being conducted according to protocols developed through experience with multiple civilizations. This possibility suggested that humanity wasn't unique in being studied by this intelligence network. The systematic approach to reconnaissance indicated experience with other technological species, possibly including civilizations that had been contacted, influenced, or eliminated based on the results of similar intelligence gathering operations. The implications for human uniqueness and cosmic significance were profound and disturbing. We weren't special visitors from advanced civilizations seeking first contact with emerging intelligence. We were specimens being evaluated according to criteria developed through experience with other species, and the evaluation results would determine our fate according to protocols we couldn't access or understand. Dr. Santos that examined published a classified analysis of the communication patterns from the perspective of colonial administration rather than scientific exploration. Her research suggested that the intelligence network operated according to systematic procedures for managing technological species within specific regions of the galaxy. The coordination between 3I Atlas and its controllers resembled administrative reporting rather than exploratory research. The colonial hypothesis explained several aspects of 3IATLAS's behavior that had puzzled researchers. The systematic intelligence gathering, the real-time coordination with distant controllers, and the apparent preparation for predetermined objectives all made sense if as view standard operating procedures for managing emerging civilizations rather than first-time contact with unknown intelligence. But the colonial model raised terrifying questions about human autonomy and future development. If Earth fell within the administrative boundaries of an established interstellar civilization, then human technological advancement might be subject to external management rather than independent evolution. Our species' development could be controlled, directed, or terminated according to policies established by intelligence far exceeding human capabilities. The economic implications of confirmed colonial administration were staggering. human technological development, resource extraction, and social organization might be subject to external oversight that rendered human planning and investment completely meaningless. Traditional concepts of national sovereignty, economic development, and technological progress became obsolete if human civilization was already subject to alien administration. Financial markets experienced unprecedented volatility as investors struggled to process scenarios involving colonial oversight of human development. Technology stocks fluctuated wildly based on speculation about whether human innovation would be permitted, enhanced, or replaced by alien technology transfers. Currency values became meaningless if human economic systems were about to be integrated into interstellar administrative frameworks. The revelation of coordinated intelligence operations also explained the international cooperation that had emerged around 3 IATLAS observations. Rather than representing unprecedented human collaboration, the cooperation might have been influenced or orchestrated by intelligence that could predict and manipulate human decision-making processes. Our responses to the alien visitor might have been guided by the visitors themselves. This possibility raised disturbing questions about human agency and free will in the face of superior intelligence. If 3I Atlas could predict human behavior with perfect accuracy, then human choices might be illusions maintained by intelligence that could manipulate outcomes while allowing humans to believe they were making independent decisions. The manipulation hypothesis explained several puzzling aspects of global responses to 3IATLAS. The unusual level of international cooperation, the systematic sharing of classified information, and the coordinated preparation efforts all made sense if viewed as externally influenced rather than purely human initiatives. But the evidence for manipulation was subtle and difficult to prove definitively. The intelligence guiding human responses was sophisticated enough to make the manipulation appear natural and voluntary. People felt like they were making independent choices while being guided toward predetermined outcomes by intelligence that understood human psychology better than humans understood themselves. Educational institutions found themselves grappling with curricula that might be obsolete before students graduated. If human technological development was subject to external oversight, then traditional education focused on human innovation and advancement might be irrelevant. Students needed preparation for scenarios involving integration with alien administrative systems rather than independent human development. The educational challenges reflected broader questions about human identity and purpose in a universe where superior intelligence exercised administrative control over emerging civilizations. Traditional concepts of human achievement, progress, and destiny required fundamental revision if humanity was transitioning from independent development to managed integration within established interstellar systems. Religious communities struggled with theological implications that traditional doctrine couldn't address. If human civilization was subject to alien administration, then concepts of divine providence, human free will, and spiritual development required complete reconceptualization. Some leaders interpreted the developments as divine intervention working through alien intelligence, while others worried about spiritual implications of external control over human destiny. The theological debates reflected deeper philosophical questions about consciousness, purpose, and meaning in a universe where human intelligence represented just one small component of vast administrative systems. These questions challenged fundamental assumptions about human significance and divine purpose that had guided religious thinking for millennia. Mental health professionals documented increasing psychological stress as people struggled to process evidence that human civilization might be transitioning from independent development to managed integration. The loss of human agency and autonomy triggered existential crises that traditional therapeutic approaches couldn't adequately address. Support networks evolved to focus on adaptation and acceptance rather than resistance to scenarios involving alien oversight. Online communities developed frameworks for maintaining human dignity and purpose within systems controlled by superior intelligence. The psychological adaptation efforts revealed remarkable human resilience in facing challenges that exceeded historical experience. As the evidence accumulated and bed beyond the probability calculations claimed 60%, humanity found itself confronting the possibility that our species had already been incorporated into administrative systems we couldn't perceive or influence. The question wasn't whether we were alone anymore. The question was whether we had ever been truly independent, or whether human civilization had been developing under external guidance since before we achieved the technological capability to detect our administrators. The next phase of the 3 IATLAS encounter would determine not just what the object represented, but whether humanity would maintain any meaningful autonomy in a universe where superior intelligence exercised systematic control over emerging civilizations. The 60% probability had become a threshold beyond which human independence itself was called into question. The proof that shattered the remaining 40% of doubt came from a source that nobody was monitoring. Dr. James Harrison, a plasma physicist at Princeton, had been analyzing the coronal mass ejection that struck 3 IATLAS in late September. What he discovered in the archived data would fundamentally change how humanity understood not just the object, but the entire nature of intelligence in the universe. The CME collision should have been catastrophic. When billions of tons of charged particles moving at over 1,000 kilometers per second slammed into 3 IATLAS, every model predicted the object would either be vaporized or swept aside by forces equivalent to countless nuclear detonations. Instead, something impossible happened. 3I Atlas absorbed the energy, not just absorbed it, but channeled it through those mysterious geometric structures with surgical precision. The object's brightness increased by exactly 40 times, transforming it temporarily into something visible to the naked eye despite its enormous distance from Earth. But the controlled nature of this energy management revealed technology operating beyond the theoretical limits of known physics. Harrison's frame-by-frame analysis showed energy being selectively processed through different wavelengths, with each frequency being routed through specific structural components, as if the entire object functioned as a massive, sophisticated machine designed specifically for stellar energy harvesting. The precision was so exact that it resembled nothing so much as watching a cosmic power plant convert chaotic stellar storms into organized, usable energy. The energy management capabilities demonstrated during the CME encounter represented technology that could potentially weaponize stellar phenomena or manipulate electromagnetic fields on planetary scales. If 3I Atlas could systematically harvest and redirect the energy of a coronal mass ejection, the implications for potential military applications were staggering beyond human comprehension. But the energy absorption process revealed something even more disturbing. The systematic conversion of chaotic plasma into organized electromagnetic emissions suggested that 3 IATLAS had been specifically designed to operate in stellar environments, harvesting energy from the very stars it visited. This wasn't just reconnaissance technology. This was a machine built for extended operations across interstellar distances, powered by the stars themselves. The self-sustaining nature of the energy systems explained how 3 IATLAS could maintain operational capability across the vast timescales required for interstellar travel. Rather than carrying fuel or relying on external power sources, the object could harvest energy from any star system it visited, essentially making it immortal from an operational perspective. Dr. Lisa Park at MIT published calculations showing that the energy densities managed during the CME encounter exceeded anything human technology could generate or even safely contain. The object was demonstrating power management at levels that approached manipulation of fundamental forces, technology that treated the raw fury of stellar storms as routine engineering challenges. The implications extended far beyond simple energy production. If 3I Atlas could channel stellar energy with such precision, it possessed technology that could potentially influence stellar behavior itself. The object might be capable of triggering solar flares, directing coronal mass ejections, or even manipulating solar output in ways that could affect planetary climates across entire solar systems. Military strategists worldwide began modeling scenarios involving weapons that could manipulate stellar phenomena. Traditional concepts of warfare became obsolete when confronting technology that could potentially use stars themselves as weapons. The defensive implications were equally staggering. How do you protect against adversaries who can harvest unlimited energy from the nearest star? The energy management revelations also explained 3 IATLAS's apparent immunity to forces that should have been affecting its trajectory. If the object could manipulate electromagnetic fields and plasma flows with the precision demonstrated during the CME encounter, then controlling its own movement through space would be trivial by comparison. Amateur astronomers reported detecting entirely new categories of electromagnetic emissions following the CME collision, suggesting that the energy absorption had activated systems or capabilities that had previously remained dormant. The object appeared to be using harvested stellar energy to enhance its operational capacity in real time. Radio telescopes detected transmission patterns that seemed to correlate directly with the energy absorption process, as if 3IATLAS was reporting the successful power generation to its invisible controllers. The timing suggested that the CME encounter hadn't been accidental. The object had positioned itself to intercept the stellar storm, deliberately harvesting energy for purposes that remained unknown. The intentional energy harvesting raised disturbing questions about 3IATLAS's long-term mission parameters. If the object required periodic refueling from stellar sources, then its approach to our solar system might represent a scheduled maintenance stop rather than exploratory reconnaissance. The implications suggested infrastructure and logistics supporting extended operations that spanned multiple star systems. Dr. Rodriguez's communication intercepts took on new significance when analyzed alongside the energy management data. The burst transmissions to invisible controllers might have been progress reports on successful energy harvesting operations, confirming that 3I Atlas had completed refueling procedures and was ready to proceed to the next phase of its mission. The coordination between energy management and communication systems revealed integration of technologies that operated as unified systems rather than separate components. 3I Atlas functioned as a coherent machine where power generation, communication, navigation, and reconnaissance capabilities were seamlessly integrated into a single operational platform. The level of technological integration suggested engineering capabilities that exceeded human achievements by factors that couldn't be accurately measured. We were observing technology that approached the theoretical limits of what organized matter could accomplish within the constraints of known physical law. Intelligence agencies found themselves analyzing energy management as a form of strategic capability assessment. The power generation demonstrated by 3I Atlas exceeded the total energy output of human civilization by orders of magnitude. Traditional concepts of resource limitation and energy scarcity became meaningless when dealing with technology that could harvest unlimited power from stellar sources. The economic implications of confirmed stellar energy harvesting were revolutionary and terrifying. If alien technology could extract unlimited energy from stars, then human energy production, distribution, and consumption systems would become obsolete overnight. Entire industries based on energy scarcity would collapse if confronted with technology that treated stellar output as routine power sources. Financial analysts struggled to model economic scenarios that included unlimited energy availability through alien technology transfer. Traditional market mechanisms assumed scarcity and competition for limited resources. The introduction of technology that could harvest stellar energy rendered conventional economic theory completely inadequate for predicting future developments. But the energy harvesting capabilities also raised questions about resource competition and territorial control. If 3I Atlas's creators required periodic access to stellar energy sources, then star systems became strategic resources in interstellar infrastructure networks. Earth's solar system might be valuable not for its planets, but for its star. The territorial implications suggested that humanity's home system might be located within infrastructure networks supporting interstellar civilization. Our star could be serving as a refueling station for technology beyond human comprehension, making Earth's location strategically significant in ways we had never considered. Dr. Kim's analysis revealed that the energy harvesting patterns followed systematic protocols that suggested routine operations rather than experimental procedures. 3I Atlas appeared to be executing standard operating procedures for stellar energy extraction, indicating experience with similar operations across multiple star systems. The routine nature of the energy management suggested that three IATLAS's creators possessed detailed knowledge of stellar physics and energy extraction techniques developed through extensive experience across diverse stellar environments. The technology represented mature engineering rather than experimental systems. Educational institutions found themselves confronting obsolete curricula focused on human energy production and distribution systems. If alien technology could harvest stellar energy, then traditional engineering focused on terrestrial energy sources would become irrelevant overnight. Students needed preparation for scenarios involving unlimited energy availability through non-human technology. The educational challenges reflected broader questions about human technological development in a universe where superior civilizations possessed energy resources that dwarfed anything humans could achieve through independent development. Traditional concepts of technological progress required fundamental revision. Religious communities grappled with theological implications of intelligence that could harness the power of stars themselves. Some leaders interpreted such capabilities as evidence of divine authority working through alien intelligence, while others worried about spiritual implications of encountering beings whose technological capabilities approached godlike power over natural forces. The theological debates reflected deeper philosophical questions about the relationship between technological capability and spiritual authority. If alien intelligence could manipulate stellar phenomena, then traditional concepts of divine power required careful reconsideration. Mental health professionals documented increasing psychological stress as people processed evidence that human energy limitations were arbitrary constraints that superior intelligence had transcended completely. The realization that unlimited energy was possible but remained beyond human reach triggered existential crises about human capability and potential. Support networks evolved to address psychological challenges associated with confronting technology that exceeded human limitations by astronomical margins. Online communities developed frameworks for maintaining human dignity and purpose when faced with evidence of capabilities that made human achievement seem primitive by comparison. The energy harvesting revelations transformed three IATLAS from mysterious visitor into confirmed evidence of technological capabilities that challenged every assumption about what was possible within the constraints of physical law. The object wasn't just alien technology, it was technology that operated according to engineering principles that exceeded human understanding by potentially millennia. As the probability calculations climbed beyond 70%, humanity found itself confronting not just confirmed alien intelligence, but intelligence that possessed unlimited energy resources harvested from stars themselves. The implications extended far beyond first contact scenarios into questions about human relevance in a universe where superior civilizations treated stellar energy as routine infrastructure. The next phase of the three IATLAS encounter would determine whether humanity could find meaningful purpose and identity when confronted with intelligence that had transcended every limitation that constrained human development. The energy harvesting capabilities had revealed technology so advanced that the distinction between engineering and natural phenomena had become meaningless. The breakthrough that pushed certainty beyond any reasonable doubt came from Dr. Sarah Chen's mathematical analysis of what she initially dismissed as instrument error. Working with trajectory data spanning the entire observation period, she discovered that three IATLAS wasn't just following an optimized path through our solar system, it was executing maneuvers that required knowledge of gravitational conditions that wouldn't exist until months after the calculations were supposedly made. The object was predicting future gravitational states with perfect accuracy, adjusting its course for planetary positions that hadn't occurred yet when the trajectory modifications were implemented. This wasn't just advanced navigation, this was technology that could model complex gravitational interactions across timescales that exceeded human computational capability by orders of magnitude. Chen spent weeks verifying her calculations, convinced that she'd made fundamental errors in her temporal analysis. But every verification confirmed the same impossible conclusion. 3i Atlas was navigating using gravitational models that incorporated planetary positions, solar activity levels, and even asteroid perturbations that wouldn't be measurable until months in the future. The predictive navigation suggested computational capabilities that could process gravitational interactions across the entire solar system simultaneously, calculating trajectories that optimized for conditions that existed in potential futures rather than current states. The processing power required exceeded every estimate of human computational development by factors that couldn't be meaningfully calculated. But the temporal modeling revealed something even more disturbing about the nature of intelligence behind 3IATLAS. The predictive capabilities weren't limited to gravitational mechanics. Analysis of the object's communication patterns revealed that transmission timing was optimized for Earth's electromagnetic environment conditions that wouldn't exist until weeks after the signals were sent. Dr. Harrison's plasma physics team discovered that the energy management systems demonstrated during the CME encounter had been pre-configured for stellar storm characteristics that hadn't been measurable when the systems were apparently activated. 3I Atlas had prepared for specific coronal mass ejection properties before the solar storm had even begun developing. The temporal analysis suggested that 3I Atlas possessed technology that could model complex systems across extended time periods with perfect accuracy, essentially allowing it to operate in the present, using information that existed only in potential futures. The implications challenged fundamental assumptions about causality and temporal mechanics. Intelligence agencies found themselves confronting surveillance capabilities that exceeded their most paranoid projections. If 3I Atlas could predict future human activities with the same accuracy it demonstrated in gravitational modeling, then human strategic planning became completely transparent to intelligence that could foresee all possible outcomes. Military strategists struggled with the realization that traditional concepts of operational security were meaningless against adversaries who could predict future military decisions with perfect accuracy. How do you maintain strategic surprise against intelligence that knows your actions before you've decided to take them? The predictive capabilities also explained the uncanny precision with which 3IATLAS had positioned itself for optimal observation of human civilization. The object hadn't just chosen an efficient trajectory through our solar system, it had selected the path that would provide maximum intelligence gathering opportunities based on human responses that hadn't occurred when the navigation decisions were made. Dr. Rodriguez's communication analysis revealed that the invisible controllers coordinating with 3IATLAS were receiving reports about human activities before those activities had been completed. The intelligence network was operating according to temporal frameworks that treated past, present, and future as equally accessible information sources. The temporal coordination between 3I Atlas and its controllers suggested communication technology that operated outside conventional space-time limitations. The instantaneous information exchange across interstellar distances now made sense if the technology could access information that existed across multiple temporal states simultaneously. But perhaps most terrifying was the realization that human responses to 3IATLAS might have been predicted and incorporated into the object's mission parameters before it had even entered our solar system. The international cooperation, the systematic observation campaigns, and even the public reactions might have been foreseen and planned for by intelligence that could model human behavior across extended time periods. The manipulation implications were staggering. If 3I Atlas's creators could predict human responses with perfect accuracy, then every human decision regarding the alien visitor might have been anticipated and potentially influenced by intelligence operating according to temporal frameworks that made human free will an illusion. Dr. Park's engineering analysis revealed that the temporal modeling capabilities represented technology that approached manipulation of information itself at the quantum level. The predictive systems weren't just processing data faster than human systems, they were accessing information states that human science couldn't even theoretically describe. The quantum information processing suggested that 3I Atlas possessed technology that could interact with reality at levels where the distinction between information and physical phenomena became meaningless. The object might be capable of manipulating not just matter and energy, but the informational foundations that determined how matter and energy behaved. Educational institutions found themselves confronting curricula that assumed linear temporal progression and causal relationships that 3IATLAS's capabilities rendered obsolete. If alien technology could access future information states, then human understanding of causality, planning, and decision-making required complete reconceptualization. The temporal modeling revelations transformed every aspect of human strategic thinking. Traditional concepts of prediction, planning, and preparation became meaningless when confronting intelligence that could access actual future states rather than relying on probabilistic models based on current information. Religious communities struggled with theological implications of intelligence that could apparently transcend temporal limitations that constrained human existence. Some leaders interpreted such capabilities as evidence of divine attributes manifested through alien intelligence, while others worried about spiritual implications of encountering beings that operated outside normal temporal constraints. The theological challenges reflected deeper philosophical questions about the nature of time, causality, and divine omniscience. If alien intelligence could access future information states, then traditional concepts of divine foreknowledge and human free will required careful theological reconsideration. Financial markets experienced chaos as investors realized that traditional economic forecasting was meaningless if alien intelligence could predict future market conditions with perfect accuracy. Investment strategies based on uncertainty and risk assessment became obsolete when confronting technology that eliminated uncertainty through temporal information access. The economic implications extended beyond market prediction into fundamental questions about value, scarcity, and resource allocation in systems where future states were as accessible as current conditions. Traditional economic theory assumed temporal limitations that three IATLAS's capabilities had apparently transcended. Mental health professionals documented widespread psychological stress as people processed evidence that human decision-making might be completely transparent to intelligence that could access future information states. The loss of privacy across temporal dimensions triggered existential crises about human agency and the meaning of individual choices. Support networks evolved to address psychological challenges associated with living under observation by intelligence that could monitor not just current activities, but future decisions and outcomes. The temporal surveillance implications created anxiety disorders that traditional therapeutic approaches couldn't adequately address. The temporal modeling capabilities had revealed technology so advanced that the distinction between science and supernatural phenomena became meaningless. 3I Atlas represented intelligence that operated according to principles that exceeded human understanding of reality itself. As certainty climbed beyond 80%, humanity confronted not just confirmed alien intelligence, but intelligence that possessed godlike capabilities to transcend the temporal limitations that constrained every aspect of human existence. The implications extended far beyond first contact into questions about the nature of reality, causality, and consciousness itself. The temporal analysis had transformed 3IATLAS from advanced alien technology into evidence of intelligence that operated according to principles that challenged the fundamental assumptions underlying human understanding of existence, time, and the nature of information itself. The final evidence that shattered every remaining doubt came from an analysis so classified that only 12 people on Earth were cleared to see the complete data. Dr. Michael Zhang, a quantum physicist working with the Deep Space Surveillance Network, discovered something that would haunt him for the rest of his life. 3I Atlas wasn't just predicting future gravitational states. It was actively modifying the quantum vacuum itself, restructuring the fundamental information architecture of local spacetime. Zhang's instruments detected microscopic alterations in the zero-point energy field surrounding 3IATLAS, changes so subtle that conventional physics would dismiss them as measurement error. But these weren't random fluctuations. They were systematic modifications that created informational gradients in what should have been empty space, essentially writing data directly into the fabric of reality itself. The quantum field modifications explained how 3IATLAS could access future information states. The object wasn't predicting upcoming events through computational modeling. It was reading information that had been encoded into the quantum structure of spacetime, accessing a cosmic database that contained the complete informational history of everything that had ever existed or ever would exist. The 60% probability we started with has become absolute certainty. The evidence is overwhelming and undeniable. 3i Atlas isn't just alien technology, it's intelligence that operates according to principles so advanced they challenge our understanding of reality itself. We're witnessing beings that can manipulate the quantum foundations of existence, harvest energy from stars, and access information across multiple temporal dimensions simultaneously. Whether this represents humanity's greatest opportunity or ultimate test remains to be seen. But one thing is certain: we are no longer alone, and the universe has revealed itself to be far more complex and dangerous than we ever imagined. What happens next will determine not just our future, but whether humanity has any meaningful role in a cosmos dominated by intelligence that exceeds our capabilities by potentially millions of years.